This is what you call an alpha hole shot. This is one part sweat from our main hero love interest when he goes to the gym, because he has time for that, the tears of Sarah J. Maas stans, and what is left of my dignity. I had some left. What little of it was there is now in this shot glass. I don't know why that tasted bad, but it did. So y'all are here for this book. I'm not going to hold it. It's too fucking heavy for that. I am drinking and it's like maybe 11 something. I don't know. It's fucking self-isolation. Rules don't exist anymore, and I'm doing a rant review that you guys really fucking want. So let's get into it. First and fucking foremost, this book is too long. Second, this book is basically a Court of Thorns and— oh, I should probably introduce myself. What's up, nerds? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie. If you're new here, I hope your day is going well. Secondly, this is basically a Court of Thorns and Roses dipped into an urban fantasy setting. Third, this is an adult urban fantasy book. Just straight up. This is very much in a genre that already exists, and we don't see anything new from this genre. You can find this book on pretty much any thrift store shelf that came out between 95 and 2005. Urban fantasy has been around for several decades, and it's been a safe place for 25 to 45-year-old women to get their rocks off in a safe setting, and Sarah J. Maas didn't do anything new with it. At all. I just dropped the camera a little bit. Hopefully no one fucking hates that. That sucks. So, what did I like about this book? The cover? I matched my makeup to it, can you tell? Now, here's the thing. It's been a minute since I read this book, and when I did read this book, I was having kind of a weird time in my life. Like, I know that everyone right now is having kind of a weird time in their life, but like when I was reading this book specifically, I wanted something very light, very fluffy, very much a guilty pleasure read to get me back into reading. I was in a reading slump on top of just being a slump of a person, and did this book do that? Fuck no! Now, I'm not gonna disagree with the fact that this is a fun read. A lot of people are saying that, a lot of people are enjoying this book. I'm just going to say it wasn't fun for me in the slightest, and I'm gonna tell you fucking why. There was a lot of soapboxing on issues that I didn't really agree with, and there was basically misogyny disguised as wokeness, and it just really didn't work for me at all. I couldn't even read it for smut because there was no fucking smut. Lack of sex is something I really want to touch on, specifically in this book, because it was something that kind of really grinded me to a halt after I saw people talking about it before I started getting into this novel. Now, I wasn't necessarily going to say that I needed this novel to have sex in it, like sex scenes, but I am very surprised that it didn't, and I'll get into why I think that that's surprising. Now, there have been a few videos and books that I've talked about having kind of like a fake sexy woke girl in them, and specifically the videos that I'm talking about that I've done is my Artemis rant review, as well as Why Are Female Characters Written So Terribly video. These two videos specifically have me kind of discuss situations where it seems like the girl main character is sexy or like sex, but we never actually visibly see her have sex on the page. Now let's talk about Bryce from this book. This is the main character. I don't like her name. I don't really like anyone's name in this book. Let's be real. I don't really like any of the characters, but whatever. I also spent most of this book thinking that the main character was blonde, because that's kind of every character that Sarah J. Maas has, and it wasn't until fan arts came out that she has red hair that I was like, oh, interesting. There's a main character with red hair whose dad is the Autumn King and also has lots of daddy issues. That's what you call very easy. Back on topic. Bryce, at the beginning of the book, is not really a good person. I would argue that she's not really a good person at any point. She breaks up with her boyfriend at the beginning of the book and only wears a little bit of makeup, because the only reason you put makeup on as a female is because you're trying to woo the man. And then she goes and fucks something else in the bathroom where her not yet boyfriend is getting brutally murdered with her best friend and a whole bunch of other characters that are not important because they die 100 pages into the book and are really not that important in the first place because they were going to die in the synopsis anyway. There is a thing called delete or drop your prologue that Jay Kristoff was talking about at some point, and honestly, this book should have done that. We should not have had any build up in the first beginning of this book. There should have just been a scene where Danica fucking dies and then we start the book immediately immediately after that. It should have been like that. It would have made so much more sense, and there would have been less slogging of stupid world building to get through. I'm also very angry, can you tell? Now, for most of this book, the main character Bryce is treated like a dumb skank. And she treats herself like a dumb skank. Now, I don't mind some dumb skankery, but I want my dumb skankery to be on the page. There's several instances where we hear that Bryce did something slutty, or we see the entail of it. Another fucking stupid book. But we don't actually see her do it. We don't actually see her enjoying sex. Now, I have a lot of opinions on sexual empowerment for women in books, but this particular novel suffers from fake, sexy, woke girl to a whole other extent that I was not expecting for a Sarah J. Maas novel. I'm surprised we didn't have a reusable fucking condom conversation, to be honest. Just for me, I just believe that you should show your character, not tell the audience that your character likes a certain thing. Now, I think the reason that we didn't get what we all expected from this book was because sex is taboo. What? Sex in books is taboo? What are you talking about, Maddie? Why yes, let me explain. Sex in books is usually called erotica and is not meant for the highest profile of literature because it cheapens the quality of the novel. Adult fiction that is being taken seriously cannot include consensual sex because it makes it seem as if it is chick lit or romance. Romance or chick lit or smut must not be included in fantasy because it makes readers uncomfortable that they are in fact not getting it. You can absolutely talk about characters having sex. You can even let them talk about wanting to have sex with each other, but you cannot let them have sex because that cheapens the story. You can include instances of abuse or sexual trauma because tension, but you can't have sex in books where both parties are enjoying themselves. Now you're probably wondering, it's Sarah J. Maas. She has lots of sex in her books. I think the reason why these books are different than her other books is because the other books are young adult fiction. Maddie, what the fuck are you talking about? Now, as you know, young adult literature is not meant to actually broaden the horizons of children. It is meant to rot their brains from the inside until they are ready to actually read high pedigree literature like Keats and Hemingway and Tolkien. It's not like Harry Potter wasn't a global phenomenon that encouraged young minds to think outside the box. It doesn't matter that The Hunger Games inspired many a youth to rise up during dark times. And it absolutely does not matter that Twilight changed the cultural mindset of many a young woman and man across the globe. Young adult fiction should not be considered literature because it is for children. No young adult fiction could ever handle the complexities of adult life, and honestly, if anyone ever tells you that adults know what the fuck they're doing, don't believe them, they are on crack. Basically, what I felt like while I was reading this book was that it was pandering to a fucking audience that Sarah J. Maas hasn't basically addressed before. Adult fiction. Now, there is a common misconception, especially in higher fantasy, that sex shouldn't be on the page. And this book, I feel like that's the reason why we had it. And for some fucking reason, I believe that because her other books were meant for a younger audience, they were able to go around that rule for some reason. And I just don't quite understand why, from an author that has put pornographic scenes in books meant for 16-year-olds or younger, that she wasn't going to put some sort of actual smut into her novel meant for the people that are above the age of consent in the country that I live in. I read the A Court of Dicks and Flying Sex series. There is so much sex in those books comparatively to Crescent City. I don't necessarily think that she had to implement sex, but I think that the lack of it, but the still prevalent alpha male, female, beta female relationship being there, and then just not having sex because we didn't have time in this book. What? You didn't have time for it? Okay, but the men can go to the gym? Alright. Basically, I'm blue balls and I don't like it. I think on top of all of this, I didn't like the love interest. His name's Hunt. That's fucking stupid. He just read like Reese to me. There was no difference. He looks exactly like him with that face tattoo. Okay. There was a huge focus on Bryce and him being friends, and I didn't see that. They didn't have anything in common to my knowledge. They just had, like, sexual attraction I guess. I didn't even really feel that. That's the thing. Like, I feel like in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, we did have sexual attraction between Rhys and Feyre, and I enjoyed that a lot. But Bryce and Hunt didn't have anything for me. Like, I just was like, you guys are like two wet paper towels trying to have sex, and it just really doesn't work. And she's like 26 and he's like 300. What on earth do they have to talk about? And they have a hyena that can teleport, but not when the plot makes it not so, I guess. She cooks for him at some point in this book too, and he literally thinks in his internal monologue, dogs get better food than this. Like, what? Another thing that bugged me about this book was the word alphahole. If you don't know what this is, let me ruin your day. This word was coined to be the book's sort of semi-self-aware stance on the alpha male douche bro 2D character. And that's kind of funny once. This book uses that word like a fucking million times. And then there's a whole scene where Hunt's telling Bryce that she's actually the alpha hole, and it gets real all men deserve rightsies real fucking quick. I'm all for having like a poke fun at your own genre type of thing, but like all the love interests were super douchey alpha males, and so it wasn't funny. Like, you can poke fun at the fact that this genre has those type of people, but then you have to have like at least one alternate character to make it like sure that you're aware that you have the ability to write other characters. I don't know. Do you guys understand what I'm saying here? Like, it was just not funny to me, and it was used too fucking much. Now, the biggest thing that really disappointed me about this book was the world building, because this book is fucking meaty, and it's not done in a way that makes any sense. I really, really love world building. You guys know I fucks with some heavy world building, but I like it when the world building has some sort of semblance of intuitive understanding, and you get the idea pretty quickly, and you can have some extra words. That's not what happened in this. Now, I really did enjoy the way that the Court of Thorns and Roses world building is done. It's a fantasy world where the humans have the shit end of the stick and there's people with pointy ears. It's pretty cut and dry. But Crescent City had a very different approach. World building was so heavy, it was exhausting to read. And the only reason I think that this is a thing is because Sarah J Maas was taking on adult fiction. There's no other reason for the world building in this book to be as complex and as ridiculous. There were countless times things were just listed. Like this particular quote where they're describing the demons of the world. They came in endless breeds and levels of intelligence, ranging from the beasts that resembled feline canine hybrids to the humanoid shape-shifting princess who ruled over hell, one L by the way, because fuck you, 7 territories, each one darker than the last. The hollow, the trench, the canyon, the ravine, the chasm, the abyss, and the worst of them all, the pit. I would like to just point out that it literally just looks like Sarah J Maas Googled thesaurus and put in hole. Not that type of hole, you fucking pervert. So basically, there's no context or follow-up on any of these long dumps of just things about the world. No editor was like, hey, maybe we could like save that for the next book. No, I'm honestly thinking that Sarah J Maas gets paid by the word now, because nobody looked at this book and went, maybe it's a little too long. Like, in this particular instance, size matters and it needs to be smaller. I did have a favorite character though. I will say that. There was one character that I thoroughly enjoyed. His name is Rune, not to be confused with Rhys, and he's Bryce's half-brother, who she keeps telling everyone is her cousin, and for some reason everyone fucking believes it. I really enjoyed his character, specifically when he says on page 665 of like 800 pages, this time his only enemy seemed to be boredom. At 665 pages into an 800-page book, you would think that your characters are not bored. You would think that there's some sort of gravity to whatever situation they're in that they need to remedy. This is not the time for slow pacing. No, that's not what we got. We got bored characters. I also didn't really enjoy the ending on its own. Like, it dragged itself out and we just watched things happen as they were happening and no one was really doing anything or collaborating on anything. And there was a big battle, the girl does something, she dies, and whoa, look, she came back. Like, okay. I also think that the end of the book could have been like more like compelling if some of what happened at the end of the book happened at the beginning of the book. Like, Or like maybe the first 100 pages were just not there and like we learn things as things happen. I don't know. And the other thing that didn't work for me was Bryce's relationship with Danica, which is the whole premise of the fucking book. Due to the super heavy world building and the first 100 pages of this book, which are all spoiled by the synopsis, Danica and Bryce are best friends forever. We are certainly told that they're best friends forever, and we're also told that they were college roommates like a million fucking times. And throughout the whole book, Bryce is like, I knew Danica best. And then people are like, hey, Danica was doing this thing. And Bryce is like, what? She didn't tell me. And I'm like, maybe at some point you kind of realize that she wasn't your best friend. Like, she didn't tell you jack shit. I saw another reviewer talking about how they wanted more emotional complexities in this book, specifically because it's supposed to be a new adult. I really thought that Bryce's character in the beginning of the novel, where she's a partier, she's kind of a fuck up, she doesn't really care about what people feel about her or want from her, she just doesn't really care. But then we get this flash forward 2 years later where she's just kind of chilling on her own and she's having sex with people in bathrooms, but she's really buttoned up and buttoned down and not like trying to go out of her way to do anything. And she seems really well adjusted for the fact that her best friend died in a slaughter. And I'm just kind of confused because I think it would have been more interesting to see her go into this like research on her own to try and figure out what happened to Danica, but she doesn't do anything until the man shows up. New adult is one of those genres that could really take off and really go places for people of my age range, but I just feel like this particular novel didn't do anything that really made it stand out as a different like genre of fantasy. It did everything that the genre has already done, and it didn't do any new ways or interesting ways, and I just didn't fucking like it. Diverted from everything that her earlier books have done in the light, fluffy, sexy way, adding violence and swear words to your book doesn't make it adult, and adding a whole bunch of world building doesn't disguise the fact that you can't write a different plotline. Ever. I would have liked to see a lot more emotional gravity with the characters and a plot line that we at least can predict every fucking moment of. I would have liked to see sex in this book. Not that new adult has to have sex, but I was expecting sex from this book and apparently I was very disappointed that it wasn't here. Basically what I'm saying is that I feel like this was supposed to be a more highbrow version of Sarah J Maas and I just didn't want her to do that and I wanted it to be edited. Those two things didn't happen. But this is my opinion. Take it as you will. I don't give a single fuck. I'm gonna go now, guys. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Bye!